The more we hear about Heathcliff's past, the more we find out that he had good reasons to leave. Sometime later, Heathcliff regained consciousness. Dante asked if he was okay. He called what just happened to him the classic Nelly technique. It's been a while since he was on the receiving end of that. A technique to send them hurtling into their dreamlands. Nelly apologized to him. She was hoping to avoid the sleepy smack on him, especially not in a reunion like that. Heathcliff paused before asking if it was true. Is Catherine really gone? Nelly confirmed this to be true, along with his name being written into her will, and this surprised him. Well, there would be no point in you being there if it wasn't. Ishmael advised him to listen to it, at least to find out why she mentioned him. He sat down wordlessly, indicating that he would at least listen to that reading. Honglu asked if that manor was Catherine's. Nelly told him that it used to be Hindley's, and Hindley believed that Catherine stabbed him in the back, asking Linton why didn't he elaborate on that injustice. The tale on how he and Catherine stabbed him in the back, how the pair destroyed him. Linton saw it as no injustice. It was done perfectly legally, suggesting that he bring his case to T-Corp courts, if he wished. It would change absolutely nothing. It sounds like his case would hold about as much weight as a helium balloon affected by G-Corp gravity spheres, specifically applied to reduce the gravity farther. And just as the two were growling at each other, a fixer of the Orifi Association was carrying a piece of paper and was stepping between them, who told them that the 10 minutes had passed. They would now proceed to the inheritance bequeathment will reading. The will of the deceased has been verified via multiple tests and screenings, so no counterfeiting or tampering has occurred. Rodio is asking if they're verifying if it's fake. Who verifies if they're not liars? Ryushu saw this as a good question. Honglu saw it as possibly standard industry practice. Catherine requested that the letter was read in audience with the 3 attendees before the bequeathment of personal property commences. He would now read the contents of her will in full. At last, you are all gathered here. My only wish is that my words will be met with respect, without hostility among you. I hope that none of you become incensed during this occasion. It's my one and only funeral, after all. I am at peace. There is no pain, no suffering where I am. So do not consider my death a tragic one. Because by the time you are reading this, I must have reached my own heaven. This is not to say that you mustn't let sorrow into your hearts. Weep, if you will, so that I may feel your grief and know that you have all truly loved me. Wuthering Heights, an old and desolate manor. I have always been afraid of this place. Fear and nightmares would consume me every night. But now that I stand before the end of my life, I have come to accept this manor for what it is. This manor, which I will leave to my husband, Lyndon Edgar. Keep this manor, and remember me by its presence. Linton was silent at this part of the reading. Clearly, they were holding themselves back just enough to allow it to continue. Even though Hindley was not so silent at this. In fact, he was angered by this, considering what he said earlier. Then the reading continued. And my brother, Hindley, my one and only brother. Hindley knew that he'd be there somewhere. His legs were as shaky as his voice. The reading continued. I heard that you are mired in quite the heavy debts, and that you have been spending most of your days drinking and gambling. So Hindley was hoping that Catherine would give him something, anything, likely in the hopes that it would help him with his debts. The reading continued. Signed you up for the Abyssal Trauma Correctional Facility at MCOR. If you don't visit the facility within 1 week after attending this will reading, they will come to take you in. Kathy is such a troll, building his hopes up and then basically saying, you have problems, bro, so I'm sending you to the loony bin. If you don't come willingly, they'll bring you there. It's clear that there wasn't much love between those two siblings, so that's Kathy giving Hindley the finger from beyond the grave. Also, for those that need reminding, MCorp deals in moonstones. That's their singularity. Moonstones heal psychological damage. In Leviathan, Rikoko and Nanciol, two fixers under Virgilius's employ, posed as couriers of MCorp to infiltrate the Ring's lab in District 22. Well, via the access point in District 22, that lab was actually in District 14. Extracting the moonstones from the container, and it looks quite fleshy in there, was potentially psychologically damaging without protective gear. And I suspect that the SP bullets in the Botany Corporation were derived from those moonstones. They were certainly in the embroidery in some of the suits of association fixers. They were likely moonstones that was part of the uniform to help keep their minds intact during their work. Well, I could certainly see that in the Lou Association uniforms. To put it into perspective, K-Corp doesn't see them as competition, as their singularity heals the body, while M-Corp's singularity heals the mind. Much as F-Corp and J-Corp have their own complementing singularities. As in, one does one thing, the other does something else. In fact, Moses used a fairy, F-Corp's singularity, to unlock the memory of one with a J-Corp lock, preventing them from speaking of something that they know. That was in the Distortion Detective, by the way. Now, F-Corp and J-Corp singularities are good enough for the Arbiters to have weaponized. Anyway, Hindley was surprised by this, although considering what a complete hole he's been so far and what he's been up to, he shouldn't be giving Heathcliff a hard time. He at least has a career and wasn't in any debts, gambling or otherwise. The reading continued. I truly hope that your heart will be healed, dear brother. He angrily shouted that is absolute nonsense. How was he even supposed to get to M-Corp, or District 13, in a week? The reading continued. Of course, I have already prepared a warp train ticket to M-Corp for you, so please don't worry about the travel fees. I don't think that travel fees are the most pressing concern for him right now. Let's hope that she bought him a first-class ticket, as we know what goes on in a warp train. A few thousand years of torment for those in there. Except those in first class. It's unclear if she's aware of what goes on there. Hindley saw this as a load of... The Orifi Fixer warned against another disturbance of the execution of that will. Any disturbance that does occur, they will take forceful action without warning. He told the plebs of the Orifi Association, how dare they? But he backs off. The reading continued. And you, Heathcliff. Heathcliff was silent at this part, not wanting to interrupt. The reading continued. Welcome home. Then Heathcliff said, Kathy, I'm... Linton stopped himself from saying anything, likely remembering the Orifi Fixer's warning. The reading continued. Once the seventh strike of lightning falls upon this manor, my golden bower shall be yours. This caught Ishmael's attention, as that's what they're there for in the first place. The mention of this intensified the sensation that Dante felt earlier. It was somewhere within that manor, but they already knew that it was somewhere in there. From the moment that they stepped foot into that manor, the exact location, however, it eluded them. Because... Then the reading continued. I will leave my golden bower to you, Heathcliff. Ishmael understood that the golden bower was her personal property, not her estate or her family's, just her. Sinclair wanted to know what she meant by the seventh strike of lightning. Dante understood that it wasn't a golden bower. Hindley didn't know what they meant, only hearing the side of the conversation that wasn't Dante's. But Dante did. They understood that to mean that there's more than one golden bower there. Faust asked if Dante was alright. Dante told them that there's a second golden bower in that manor. Heathcliff found that hard to believe, that this wasn't at all what he wanted Kathy to come back, to hear his voice just that once. Kathy. Then it went black, and we had a flashback of the past, where Catherine told Nellie that the room was haunted, she saw a ghost. This wasn't the first time that Kathy had said this, and Nellie told her that she would thrash the evil ghost and hang them to dry on the rack. Hindley told her that ghosts aren't real. She's such a big liar. Kathy told him that she's not lying. Then their father apologized to them, asking if they've been waiting long. Hindley asking where his violin was. Catherine asking about her X-Corp all-purpose wrench. Yes. X-Corp, the wing that deals in alloys, which are hard to come by. Their father apologized as he lacked room for the violin or the wrench. Hindley wanted to know what he meant and asked what was that. Catherine was disgusted by the dirty rag. which turned out to be a younger Heathcliff, who their father found dying alone in the streets, without parents or a home. If he didn't intervene, he would have died in weather like that. Catherine didn't want that gross, dirty kid living there. Hindley demanding that he throw that thing out. He wanted his violin. Ooh, what a spoiled brat he was. He clearly didn't grow for that point. Heathcliff was asking, what were they gawking at? Cathy was silent. Hindley kept repeating that he wanted his violin. Cathy asked why he was all alone in the streets. Their father replied by saying that he had no one to care for him, taking pity on the child. There were other children like him in the back streets, no parents or relatives to look after them, no homes to shelter them. Cathy asked, what does he have now? Their father answered that he has them to look after him, and that place was his home. Hindley didn't want that ugly thing. Cathy was asking if he was saying that he doesn't want to have him. Then we moved forward in time to an older Cathy who heard the wind howling, hearing something wailing, its cry echoing through the manor halls. Nellie heard it too, advising that she close the windows. There's a nip in the air outside, asking if she remembered it still, that she was terribly afraid of those howling winds, that she was seeing ghosts. Cathy told her that she saw them still. Nellie noted that she had grown so weak ever since Heathcliff departed the manor. That's why she's seeing things. Cathy saw it as alright. She no longer fears the ghosts, because all fear stems from the ignorance of its origin, asking Nellie where she supposed Heathcliff was. This was concerning to Nellie. Cathy told her that he doesn't have anything left. She is everything he has. Firstly, let's clear this up. Wuthering Heights was not a place he ever considered to be his home. It was just a place that he lived. And secondly, if he had a reason to stay there, he would never have left in the first place. When the lights came back on, Dante, Nellie, and the damned dozen found themselves in a corridor in Wuthering Heights, and not in the room that they were in. Also, Heathcliff, for some reason, had messy hair, as he usually does, and was back in his work clothes. Rodia wanted to know what just happened. Everything went dark for a second. Sinclair thought that the lightning caused a power outage. The power was back on now. Ishmael understood what they just saw was Catherine's memories, right? Heathcliff thought so. Faust told them that must have been as it's been in the past. Such occurrences can be attributed to the influence of the Golden Bower. Then Ishmael noticed something. That they were in the corridor that they walked through earlier, where they were before that power outage. Dante couldn't see Hindley or Linton anywhere. Nellie wanted to know what just happened. Rodia was confused. They didn't take a step from that room. Yi Sang didn't think that any of them had moved. Honglu reasoned that if they didn't move, the house moved. Gregor asked Nellie if she knew anything about this. She didn't have a clue. It's been many years since she's been there herself. She didn't have a lot of reason to return ever since Catherine married Linton and left the place to live with them. Yes. Someone needs to, care for her needs, I suppose. Rutis asked her if she, when she was alive, purchased Wuthering Heights. Nellie confirmed that, but she didn't immediately move there. Nellie then noticed that changes had been made since she left. Dante noticed the numerous exposed cables, holes and cracks that seemed to be painted over. Well, she was hinted to be technically minded. Nellie said that if she was the chief butler of that manor, as Josephine appeared to be, she would have not tolerated this slovenliness. She would not have let it slide. But before she could complete that sentence, Hong Lu suggested that she was trying to make modifications to that manor. Rodia asked if it was normal for rich folks to just buy a whole manor and modify it to their liking. Hong Lu confirmed this, comparing it to changing your hairstyle, as maintaining either of those for too long would get pretty boring. Rodia seeing it as a casual full-on remodelling that rich folks do. Nellie was concerned about Heathcliff, who was silent at what he was seeing, and seemingly unconcerned. Nellie didn't know what to tell him, not even knowing how to comfort him. But what he said about Catherine and how he didn't believe that she was truly dead. He wanted her to say more. She had the idea some thoughts, and she agreed to an extent, and this surprised him. Even Nellie hadn't seen Catherine's body. She was so beside herself when Linton told her that she was dead, that she didn't even care to verify it with her own eyes. Heathcliff asked if she was saying that it's what he thinks that it is, that she might still be alive. It's nothing but suspicion at this point. Besides, he knows how she could be. She's stubborn. Sometimes doing the unexpected to the point where it's almost frightening. She even suspected that the funeral might be an awful elaborate joke from her. Heathcliff was less than amused by that last part. Nellie then said that what was certain was that the will was written in her handwriting. Linton also never stopped making modifications to the manor, even after she passed. This angered Heathcliff, that he was the one making modifications to the manor. Nellie confirmed this, although she didn't get a good look at the place, but did ask about her motives. Or rather, ask about Linton's motives at this point. But she was certain that something was about to transpire there, or has already happened. Heathcliff saw this as a big load of He doesn't understand any of that. Sinclair wanted to know more about the lightning that was mentioned in the will. Ishmael suspected that she meant literally 7 lightning strikes. Otis was asking if she was suggesting that Kathy knew that they would arrive precisely under that weather on the day of her funeral. She didn't believe that this was possible unless she was moonlighting as a prophet. Gregor couldn't understand what she was trying to do there with that will. Roger agreeing, not understanding the will of the dead. Then Nellie suspected that they might find something in her room, a clue to this. She did visit Wuthering Heights from time to time, even after she married Linton, asking Heathcliff if he remembers Catherine. Heathcliff confirmed that she did. She always liked riddles. Ooh, if she ever met the Riddler, he'd be overwhelmed. She'd overwhelm his mind quicker than you can say, "Riddle me this." Nellie confirmed that she did. Not like him, who prefers a more direct approach, which meant smashing everything to pieces. Heathcliff remembered that it got him into trouble for trying to brute force problems without even trying to think about the intent. One of the few fond memories of that place. He doesn't know if he's gotten better at that since. Well, your anger's certainly better under control. So that's something. Dante understood that they needed to find that room. From this point onwards, Heathcliff had the bereavement status, which was understandable considering the circumstances, where he would lose 10 SP each turn, when his SP was above 15. Minus 15, rather. So basically, if it's not minus 15, he'll keep losing 10 SP. He'll also lose 2 SP each time he's hit, but it would also gain him 1 offense level up. Although if it's 15 SP or lower, he'll stop losing it, unless he's hit. So, if he's hit a few times, the next turn he will hit harder. And if he's under 0 SP, it doesn't have to be minus 15 SP, he'll gain 3 attack power. Yes, a similar debuff to Ishmael in Chapter 5, isn't it? As they were searching for Kathy's room, Don Quixote spotted blood everywhere on the floor. Roger understood that nothing nice went down there. Gregor doubted that there was anyone nice down there, either, pointing them out. Hindley was telling someone to back off, asking if they know who he was. Yes, they definitely know who you were. They simply didn't care. Apparently, Josephine was conducting an interrogation, asking what he's done to the manor. He didn't know. He's as lost as she was. He then demanded Nellie to get the brutes that are attacking him off of him. Nellie wanted to know what they're doing there. Josephine viewed Nellie, along with the vagabond child and his gang of uninvited guests, with contempt. Rodia was asking if she was talking about them. Nellie told her that something was terribly wrong with the manor, asking if there's anything that she knows about this. According to Josephine, it's always been like that. She saw this as unimportant. She saw it as more important that she brought those louts to that place, believing that Kathy would have her whipped had she been there to witness that desecration. Ooh. Honestly, you didn't give him this much hassle when he brought in his syndicate thugs. Nellie was in the dark as much as her. Everyone was displaced when the lights flickered. Besides, she was more concerned about what that noise was. Josephine was asking how was she still unaware. The dead rabbit louts and the butlers were fighting each other. Where she accused Nellie that she'd prefer that they killed each other until they were all dead. Nellie wanted to know why they were fighting. Josephine answered by saying that after the lightning struck, after the light flickered, the dead rabbit suddenly charged at them. She believed that Hindley was scheming to take the manor over. Well, I doubt that the dead rabbits were there just for show. Nellie didn't know what she was talking about. Josephine made it clear that she wasn't the most sane of individuals. As she asked if she failed to heed the voice of Wuthering Heights, the voice of the mistress. Likely referring to Catherine and Hindley's dead mother. As for Hindley, he was angry at the dead rabbits going out of control, asking what this had to do with him. He's not even given them orders. Nellie was at a loss as to what to do here. Then Gregor asked if there was anything that could be done to de-escalate this, as they'd rather not get involved in something like that. Roger was confused as Josephine and those butlers, she asked if they used to serve Hindley. Nellie informed her that their service was to the owner of Wuthering Heights, not to specific individuals. They have a different contract to Nellie's. Her contract was with a specific person in a family. Theirs was to the manor and the estate itself. Rodia understood why some would want to work for a rich family to make some money, but she's failing to grasp if it was worth it for such a complicated contract that binds them to the manor and its land. According to Faust, it depends on the terms of the contract. Once they complete their duties as butlers, which may be over a set period of time or over specific conditions, as stipulated in the contract, which can include raising their fixer grades or gaining rights to certain valuable assets tied to the land itself. And then Nellie made it clear that there's an irony to that, as butlers bound to manors and estates often inherit their parents' careers and contracts. It can continue for many generations, until the initial contract was eventually forgotten. Rodia saw this as ridiculous, asking what if they forget what the contract was even about. Nellie then made it clear that just because the contract was forgotten about, that means nothing. It doesn't make it invalid, and ignorance of its numerous clauses is also no excuse. Because if they break it, even without knowing that they did, that would likely result in taboo hunters hunting them down from a nest. And it might not even be from a nest that they're living in, or even by fixers from a Wi-Fi association. Yeah. Red tape in the city can be deadly. Josephine was obsessed with following Kathy's orders even though she's dead, not listening to anyone else. And Josephine told Nellie that she wasn't wrong, advising her to get out of the way while she remained courteous, and also to not get in the way of punishing the rat, Hindley, that dared to scheme to take Wuthering Heights. And Rodia was more than willing to comply, willing to pretend that they never saw anything. Then Heathcliff remembered what Hindley did to him in the past, locking the door, preventing him from coming indoors, asking if a thing like him deserves to sit next to his family, to dine alongside them, telling him to stay put in the barn, warning him that if he sees him in the living rooms without his permission, he'll... Yes, and Dante saw Heathcliff's memories. Dante saw that this vengeance wouldn't be so difficult. if they just pretended that they didn't see anything. Leave Hindley to Josephine and her butlers and the problem resolves itself. The solution: to leave him to die. He could probably hold out for a while, but alone, he wouldn't be able to hold them off forever. Then Heathcliff was turning slightly in Dante's direction, and Dante believed that he was thinking the same thing, but surprisingly no. He didn't want to leave Hindley to die. Yes, Dante was surprised by this, that he wouldn't do this, because, well, the reason for that was because Kathy wouldn't want him to do so. To die by their hands, not like that. Yeah, you're right about that, Heathcliff. Death is too merciful for him. I mean, we can't have him die before he's transported to M-Corp's loony bin. So they fought against Josephine's butlers. After Josephine had been subdued, she heard a voice from what she believed to be Catherine, and would do as she commanded. She and the Wuthering Heights butlers would not waste any more time. They would go after the dead rabbits, and if they met again, she'd dispose of them as well. Well, she's welcome to try. After she left, Hindley wasn't even 1% grateful for them saving his worthless hide. Yes. He claimed that he could have handled them all on his own, believing that their help to beat up an old hag and her pawns wasn't needed. Dante was starting to regret saving that, feeling that they should have just left him behind. Then Hindley mocked Heathcliff's apparent inability to remember his old boss's name, questioning any loyalty that he had for him. This was a slight that Heathcliff wouldn't tolerate, asking what dodgy nonsense was he blathering about. Hindley believed that he went by Matt, not Matthew. This really Heathcliff off, asking if he's finally gone mad. Heathcliff knew him for years, so he can't get his name wrong. Faust had a look on her face that said, "Is this going to carry on for much longer?" Then Hindley remembered that the insane old hag that he referred Josephine as. She still had at least some of her wits about. Hindley still intended to take the manor back. Will be damned. Apparently he lost Wuthering Heights in a card game, where it was all down to a card in one round, believing that the game was rigged, believing that's the only explanation for how Catherine could have had the funds so readily available to purchase Wuthering Heights the moment it was put up for sale at the auction. Did Hindley play against Rodia by any chance? This was new to Heathcliff, Hindley losing the manor gambling, and Catherine buying it back. He knew that Hindley had a gambling addiction, which was why Kathy wanted him to go to the M-Corp loony bin. Yes, and Hindley confirmed that, seeing Catherine as always as insane as Josephine. He vowed that Wuthering Heights would be his again, as Matt made a deal with him. He'd help to retrieve that manor if he let them in. Nellie asked where Hindley was going. Hindley asked if they didn't seriously expect him to be cozy with them after he was saved by them. After they saved his He'd find Matt and then he'd do everything that he could to make that place his again. He then told Heathcliff to not be so quick to assume that he's really changed. He hasn't. He simply can't change. Telling him to not to forget that he's nothing but a ragged sack of waste. You really need to work on gaslighting, as you suck at it. Hindley, you need to look at yourself, from the way that you dress and how emotionally immature you are. That's a more fitting way to describe you. As for what Gregor thought of that, he said, "Was an hole." And that sums up my view on him nicely. Don Quixote was nervous, as she was unsure if he'd hear her, due to how angry he is, but Heathcliff heard her and others as they tried to cheer him up, but it turns out that the verbal abuse didn't affect him as badly as Dante expected. He told them that back then, whenever he heard contemptuous words from him, it felt as though every word was correct, that he really was a useless lowlife who deserved nothing but the rags. He spent many days and nights coming up with different ways of exacting vengeance, but now he can't even put the feeling into words. Ishmael remarked on how Hindley was the one that couldn't change, as he's desperately holding on to his past like it's all he has left, seeing him as an immature child that never grew past 10. Oh, basically a man-child, and, well, she's not wrong. We've seen how he's behaved when he first met Heathcliff, and he still behaves like that now. Otis then asked where Catherine's room was. They need to be on guard there, to be wary of their surroundings in that field of battle. Nellie told her that it should be there once they turn right, yet she wasn't sure as the corridor wasn't supposed to be that long. Then she saw something ahead, as did Otis. Some dead rabbits at the end of the corridor. Roger saw them as different than earlier, basically asking if it's just her. Nellie then told them that she's heard tales from the streets around them. Steer clear of the ones with the red eyes. Like them, rather. Then one of the dead rabbits approached them. Nellie asked them if they're looking for something, or someone. Gregor nervously told them that neither Lyndon or the butlers of Wuthering Heights are there. They all went that way, telling them that they have no beef with them. Yeah, they clearly have so little beef, it's safe to be around Hindus in India. The red eyes say otherwise. Ryushu noticed this. Otis asked if they can understand her, saying if they have any demands, to state them, if there's room for negotiation. They remained silent. Dante saw that they were completely out of it. Otis saw this, well, she saw this as a shame. She wanted to demonstrate her excellent negotiation skills to Dante. They then fought the dead rabbits, who were in no mood to speak, never mind negotiate. As for the dead rabbits, they really existed. They were a gang of Irish Americans in 19th century Manhattan, named after the omen of a dead rabbit thrown into the center of a room during a meeting. Their symbol was a dead rabbit on a pike, and they were targeted by others that saw Irish Catholics as a threat. After a series of conflicts between a rival gang that was Irish Protestant, between 1834 and 1857, Then, on the 4th of July 1857, the Dead Rabbit riots occurred, which resulted in a war between not only rival gangs but also law enforcement. Yeah, it wasn't just in Ireland that there was tensions between two religious groups. It happened on the other side of the Atlantic as well. But by 1866, 11 years later, the Dead Rabbits were history. Aside from being used as a term for a young, lower-class criminal as late as the 1880s. It was also the truth behind the fictional movie Gangs of New York. The Dead Rabbits was also the name of a gang in Liverpool, England in the 19th century, although these were unrelated to the ones that existed in Manhattan. Rather, the gang that existed in Manhattan that the ones that were a part of it belonged to. After the dead rabbits that they thought were slaughtered, Ishmael asked if they heard that too, that noise every time they killed one of them, the noise from beyond their masks. Isang heard the sound of mirrors, specifically the shattering of mirrors. Yes, Ishmael told them to wait, approaching the dead rabbit's henchman corpse, and unmasked him. And what she saw surprised her, and Sinclair noticed something wrong. Brutus recommended that they should unmask the rest of them to get a better picture of what was happening. And when they were all unmasked, it became even more puzzling for them. Sinclair didn't want to judge a book by its cover. Then Don Quixote completed that sentence by saying that they're hardly looking like backstreet syndicate thugs. Brutus agreed with that assessment. They look more like civilians. Sinclair looked concerned at the possibility of killing innocent people, rationalizing this as self-defense. Then Brutus alerted them to more red-eyed dead rabbits approaching. Don Quixote tried to reason with them, but all she received was silence and hostile actions. Ishmael didn't see this as a good time for the diplomatic approach, and they proceeded to fight this group of dead rabbits. Oh no, it was bound to go wrong eventually. Until next time. Hail the rabbits!